question. So UCare, which is the fourth largest of the four big health insurers in the state, came out publicly and said they would give $30 million back to the state, right? Which, if nothing else, is an admission that they have too much money. Because generally, corporations don't decide to give $30 million away. So there's a couple pieces to that of how, like you're kind of asking, how did they get to that point of making that decision?
Right. But that's when it hit the news.
Yep, that's right. So it's a couple things. One is there is outside and inside pressure. So I want to be clear about the credit Take Action can claim. We can claim some credit. We can claim the credit for pushing on the outside and making it politically harder for HMOs to operate the way they currently are. So we've applied that pressure externally. The Dayton administration has worked behind closed doors and said, as pressure has built, listen, HMOs, you're going to have to step up to the plate here, and along the way has, also done some good things, requiring more transparency in reporting. So outside, inside, and then UCare has its own interest. It's the fourth largest. It doesn't have the same reserves as everyone else, and so they can sort of break from the pack and, frankly, look better for it. Now, there's a lesson in this, which, I was just saying to David, right? I've been professionally organizing for years, right? Mine is not a career riddled with monumental victories over corporate titans. That's not, unfortunately, the track record right now. I don't know how many times I've been pissed off that the other side found a way to drive a wedge between us and our allies, right? And every day at the Capitol, this is happening. For once, you can see cracks emerging in the other side, right? You can begin to understand how actually UCare is a pivotal player now. They're suddenly much more important. If they come out for a cap on reserves, right, to say, because Minnesota got rid of the cap on HMO reserves, so that's one of the problems, right? The state could have been recouping all these dollars year after year after year. Right. It's now sort of in UCare's self-interest to actually be in favor of something like that, because they don't got anything to lose, right? If I were Medica, I would be not pleased. So there's a strategy lesson in all that about how once you go on the offensive, you begin to understand the landscape in a different way. And I'm speaking from experience, literally on a day-to-day basis, we're grappling with and trying to understand those realities. So.
Well, let's get some more questions, because I think one of the things that, and again, why we wanted to wrap up with this in the whole season of movement building was, the big underlying question is, has been over the last 3 years as we've been having this conversation. Are we in a movement, and what will it feel like when we are? Right? And one of the things that we talked about at the various times was, well, it'll feel like we're not running uphill with a big backpack on anymore. And so, again, as I was talking with Dan over the years, and he shared that little anecdote, just in that sense of being able to turn the tables and move from the defensive, continually defending and trying to hold together the allies that you have, knowing that it's kind of circled the wagons times, to feeling like, well, you know what, maybe we'll put them on their heels for a while. That was just one of those movement moments where it's I want us to stop and take note and say, gee, we actually can turn it. With just as simple exercises like we did tonight, what do we hold in common, and how do we move that from commonplace conversation to actual actions that hold somebody accountable in our own ways. So anyway, but I wanted to engage you guys in some questions. So what are some questions you have in our 2 minutes, and then we'll jump on?
I'm a believer. I'm a believer that direct action has its place as a tactic. For us as an organization, it's a relatively new tactic. We joined a national organization, National People's Action, which are probably the best at direct action tactics in the country, or one of the best, certainly. It has a very important role, and here's why. When the legislative arena is a safe space, and part of what we need to do is actually disrupt the sort of, how to say it. HMOs are a very powerful legislative force. Their lobbyists dress better than us. They frankly look better. They're all a bunch of very well put together people. And they are a monumental force. Honest to God, we've had legislators refer to them as the cool kids club and feeling like they're excluded from the effing cool kids, all right? That's not a good place for us. That's not an even playing field for us, right? Bad idea. where can we shape the conversation we want to have? We can do that in the streets. So when we protested Stephen Helmsley, who's the CEO of United Healthcare, his talk at the U of M, and we came in with a guitar and a few other things and went right on stage, and he ran off the stage, believe it or not. I'm shocked at the ripple effect of that. People still talk about it. HMOs still, they started scheduling meetings with us after we did that action, not when we asked. And so it's important that if these are your convictions, this is what you believe, you do need to be willing to act on them. You need to be strategic. You know, I don't believe in protest for the sake of protest, but I think well-timed and well-targeted, it can move a conversation. And I think our HMO experiences, it has. And that's, I mean, we have a rolling set of actions we've been doing, and I think they've helped us. And we still have credibility inside the Capitol. That's an important point to make. Like, we got more cred because of the actions we've done in the Capitol. That, I believe. So the question is about outsourcing, the government allowing jobs to be outsourced to other nations and driving down labor standards and wages. And, you know, I actually think the question of privatization and outsourcing is fundamentally about the role of government. So when you define the role of government as getting out of the way of free enterprise, you get the Great Recession, right? That is how banks were in a position to sell bad mortgages to lots of people and hurt them, right? And so I think it comes back to the idea of what is the role of government and what are we doing to claim the role of government. So in this HMO campaign, right, we are doing our best to say government has to play an active regulatory role. It has to ask how much money is being spent on care, how much money is it appropriate to have in reserves, what is the, like, I don't think we're going so far as to say corporations should have no role in healthcare, but if corporations are to have a role in healthcare, let's make sure we know exactly what that is and what we're getting for it. So I think the question of outsourcing, it is exactly the same thing. We make it okay for jobs to be outsourced or for jobs to be privatized. And you know, you could say corporations are only playing within the rules that they're given, and that's true. But we should never forget that corporations are, in fact, writing those rules. And that's the problem, right? So, you know, it requires, I mean, when we talk about movement, it is only a movement that's going to counter that kind of power. One point I would add is, like, it's not just about writing putting together a well-written narrative. It's about speaking with conviction. I mean, I think that's what's oftentimes missing from our discourse, right? Like the Tea Party, right, does it so well because they are pissed off, righteously so, they are pissed off and speaking from that place. Now it's also been co-opted, right? I think they've done an extraordinary job of taking the white working class and painting their fears as fears around race, right? But we as a movement could have spoken to that exact same constituency or a large percentage of it and had a conversation about how they're being cheated by, you know, the concentration of wealth in corporate America and had a very different outlook. We are, and we need to do a better job. Yeah.
So one of my goals, and we'll have time to talk for a few minutes afterwards, but one of my goals is to allow people to get out of here right at 7. This is a beautiful night. So I want to first give Dan a big round of applause.